Hello everyone, I'm Katrina and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in October and the book I read in November. I'm not going to be going into quite as much detail in this wrap-up video as I normally would like to, just because it has been quite a while since I've read most of these books. I mean, it's been at least a month and a half for the majority of them, so my brain's just been really switched off in terms of reading, so some of the details might be a little bit foggy. I can't remember everything that I would have wanted to say if I'd done this a month ago. But I still wanted to talk about these books because overall I really enjoyed them. They're between 4 and 5 stars, which I think is fantastic. So I guess we'll just start. Why don't we? First of all, I have Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, which I rated 4 out of 5 stars. I buddy read this with my friend Red, and I really enjoyed buddy reading this with her as well because she did read it a little bit faster than me, so as I was kind of trotting along at the first half, I did take a little while to get into the story, but she was like, just keep going another 50 pages and then your world will be turned upside down. And oh my gosh, was it just. The reason why I did give it 4 out of 5 stars is because the first part of the book wasn't gripping me quite enough. I was enjoying it, but I wasn't like absolutely in love with it. But when things start to really amp up, that's when I was just totally invested and raring to go with this book. Even after finishing this book, I am still struggling to describe it. I don't know why. Let's just give it a bit of a whirl. In the Grishaverse, there are the Grisha who have these magical abilities. And we have the main character, Alina, who is an orphan working as a cartographer, and she's sent on a mission to the Shadowfold, which is basically like this veil of shadow and darkness that people trek through and not everyone comes back alive. Or back at all, rather. She goes on this mission and her world is just turned upside down. I found myself quite pleasantly surprised with this book. I went in knowing that I would enjoy it, but I didn't have any kind of expectations about the story, so it just was kind of a whirlwind ride, and I really enjoyed it. I also read volumes 1 and 2 of Monstrous by Marjorie Liu, illustrated by Sana Takada. I rated volume 1 4 stars and volume 2 4.5 stars. Man oh man. Okay, the illustrations are just to die for. The detail and the darkness, it's so eerie and gruesome at times. The world I find so fascinating. There is a lot of world building that happens in this, and I have heard some people finding it kind of hard to follow along with what does happen. I didn't have a problem with that, but I did find that I slowed down my reading speed a little bit when we did get to the really heavily world building sections and just learning more about the characters. It's just such a cool story, amazing illustrations. Cannot wait for more. I also read Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shannon Maguire, which is the kind of companion prequel to Every Heart a Doorway. These books are kind of portal fantasy, so in the first one, Every Heart a Doorway, we follow these characters in this wayward home for children. So it's basically these kids that have been transported into these fantastical worlds. Think things like The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Alice in Wonderland, where they go from the real world into these fantasy lands. These children have been dragged back from the fantasy worlds that they've kind of fallen in love with, and people don't believe that they were in this other world. So some of these kids are sent to places like the Wayward Home for Children. In this book, we actually follow 2 characters that we meet in Every Heart a Doorway, Jack and Jill, and this is actually the story of them finding themselves in their fantasy world. And I ended up giving this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think the main reason why I enjoyed this a little bit more than Every Heart a Doorway is because it had that backstory that I was just craving to know more about. So in Every Heart a Doorway, we were hearing little bits and pieces about these places that these people had been and the things that they had seen, but we didn't obviously get a full-blown story. This is one of those full-blown stories, so that was really satisfying to learn more about it, and just learning more about Jack and Jill in particular I found really interesting. It was so much darker than I expected and I loved it for that. Would definitely recommend this series. They're such short books, like there's so much packed into these books. We have another 4.5 out of 5 star read, and that is Waking Gods by Sylvain Neufeld. This is the sequel to Sleeping Giants, which I read a few months ago. Also really enjoyed. I have been listening to these on audiobook, which I think is a fantastic format to consume these stories. We do have a cast of different narrators for all of the characters because we do meet a lot of characters, and the format of this is, for the most part, I think, set up as interviews, so you are getting kind of firsthand from those characters what is happening from their perspective. So I think that having the different narrators worked really well. If you read Sleeping Giants and you thought it was a little too slow paced, you were kind of waiting for a lot more action to happen sooner than it did, this will not disappoint. The stakes just kind of get higher and higher and you're just kind of thinking, how much worse can this get? There's just so much mystery, and I really liked getting to know the characters a little bit more in this one as well. There is one character in particular which in the first book I didn't particularly like. I didn't agree with a lot of the decisions that they made and their methodology. They were interesting, but I didn't like them. But in this book, I found myself really surprised that I grew to really appreciate their character for some reason. I don't know why. I can't pinpoint what exactly it is. I also read Moxie by Jennifer Matu. This is the book that was chosen for the Buy New Bibliothon's book club pick for, I think it was August to October. By the time that this video goes up, we may have already done the live show. I'll leave a link to the live stream that we did in the description below if you want to know a little bit more about all of the other girls' thoughts on this book, but I really enjoyed it. I think I've given this one 5 out of 5 stars. It was just such a feel-good and empowering book that I loved it. It's basically about this girl, Vivian, who is just fed up with all of the sexist crap happening in her high school, and she kind of decides to take a stand. And inspired by her mum's participation in the Riot Girl movement in the 90s, she makes this feminist zine that ends up kind of blowing up and sparking a revolution in her high school, and it's amazing. All of the girl power. I loved it so much, and I just really enjoyed seeing all of the different dynamics between the different characters that we meet. There is a bit of a romantic interest that I really enjoyed. Also seeing new friendships sparking and some old friendships shifting with the aftermath of everything, but it was just... Now coming to the stars of the show. I finally caved and listened to Piera. She's been begging me to read this series for way too long, and I finally picked it up and I've just been kicking myself ever since because why didn't I start it beforehand? I got around to reading Red Rising and Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, the first 2 books in the Red Rising trilogy. I am halfway through Morning Star, but these are the 2 I'm going to be talking about today. So I gave Red Rising 5 stars, Golden Sun 4.5 out of 5 stars, I think. At the same time, I was kind of getting really busy with life and everything happening, so my reading was slowing down. I think if I'd been able to marathon read this book, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. That being said, it was still fantastic. Oh my goodness. Okay, where do I start with these? Sci-fi. We have a society that is divided up into these different castes, these different races that have been like actually bred for various purposes. The main character Darrow, he is part of the lowest color, which is red, and that's all I'm gonna say. I'm trying to think of what to say without talking too much about it, because I do think you should go into this as blind as possible. The description I've given is basically the bare minimum that I went in with. I was just so blown away by this. So blown away. It just like ticks all of the boxes. We have an amazing main character who I thought was strong, didn't always make the smartest or the best decisions, but is also intelligent enough to accept the consequences and grow from them, which I thought was amazing. And just some of the things that Darrow did, oh, I was just like, yes. We had an epic cast of side characters. Where do I even begin? Mustang, Severo, Pax, just so many amazing side characters. I did find that for the most part the female side characters were basically used to move the story along rather than having their own agency at some points. I found that only to be an issue in Red Rising, not the case in Golden Sun. It's just so action-packed. It is quite gory at times, quite gory indeed, but just so much action, which I was just living for. It is quite dark, but at the same time there are some really hilarious moments. Just the banter between the characters I found to be absolutely amazing. Just some of the things that the characters do, like they don't tell you their plans until it's literally happening and you're just like, what? And it was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I can't really talk about Golden Sun at all. I feel like saying anything is spoiler territory, to be honest, but I really like the character growth that we see in this one. I really enjoyed getting to know some more of the characters, especially Mustang. There's even more action in this one, if that was even possible, and the stakes just get higher and higher and you're just like quaking in your boots like, this isn't gonna end well. So those are my thoughts on all of these books here. I hope you guys enjoyed this wrap-up video. I'd also love to know your thoughts on any of the books that I did mention and talk about today, but yeah, that's basically all that I have for now, so thank you for watching. I'll see you very soon with a new video, but until then, I'll talk to you in the comments. Bye!